Welcome into the OBR streaming network. This is a brand new edition of Things I Think I Know About the Browns after a massive win. Finally, Abby, the Browns get a win against the Ravens, halting their 5-game losing streak and, stopping the Ravens' 5-game winning streak. Everybody was talking about how they're the best team in the league going in. Abby Mueller with me at Abby_Mueller_ on Twitter. Make sure you follow her, check her out. Here's her profile. She does her own podcast, and you can get the link to all of her stuff in the description below. What's going on, Abby? How you feeling after that game Sunday?
I'm feeling great. I had to drive somewhere towards the end of that game, so I had to listen to the last few minutes on the radio in my car. And I don't really listen to football on radio, but it was honestly like more torturous because you're just like holding on to every word, like trying to make out what they're saying. So it was and it I was listening to obviously Nathan and Andrew do that final call there. So it was pretty emotional sitting in my car,
Very.
honestly, listening to it at the end with everything with Jim Donovan. And just honestly, it felt like such a release for all the fans in that moment to be like, all right, like everything's okay. Like we're gonna be okay. So it was an emotional game, which is shocking for a team that at the time was 1-6 going on to be 2-6, but it meant a lot to a lot of people, I think.
It did. It was an emotional day at the stadium. That call, I saw it, or it's everywhere on social media, but
Yeah,
Nathan did such a good job with the call at the end of that
yeah,
game for Jim. And but yeah, I mean, to go from the beginning of the week where it was like players versus fans to Jim passing, and then
yeah,
and then that game, it was like in 1 week, it was the whole gamut of emotions for Browns fans. So it just kind of,
yeah,
and then to get that win was wild.
yeah.
You know, the the difference. I've wa- I've watched the film back twice now, Abby, is because it's truly enjoyable to watch
It
the all
is,
22.
it is.
It's really fun to watch because it's like we haven't seen offense at all.
No. Yeah,
Jameis in watching it on the TV copy, you're like, yeah, he made a couple bad throws, but even when you go back and the more you dig into it,
yeah,
like even the ones that he missed, like you can see why he went there. He was changing plays at the line of scrimmage. He was finding the right answers when blitzes were coming. It was like a real professional quarterback, and it was so refreshing. Uh, I'm excited about Sunday just because I really think, and people are gonna hate this, and people have been saying it all week. They weren't 1-6 just because of a bad quarterback. I really think that a lot of the reason they were 1-6, Abby, was because their quarterback was so
yeah,
bad, like
yeah,
epically bad.
yeah.
I
And you can't say
mean,
that doesn't affect the other parts of the team, even the defense. Like it affects how hard they're going out there and playing each week when they think their quarterback is giving them a chance in a game. If they don't have any belief in that, they're not going out there and giving their all.
yeah, the energy that they played with, and like from 2 weeks ago, watching like Elijah Moore and Jerry Judy just kind of like jog through their over routes or their clear out
Yep.
routes and not really run them as hard as they possibly could, to last week, like running every route because just knowing the ball could come your way, and it like
Yeah.
they had given up, it felt like, on
Yeah.
four, and I don't, it just
Even the
like it changed
penalties
everything.
The
Yeah.
penalties too, like, I feel like so many of those were just, like, dumb mental errors where you're just not locked into what your job is on every single play, and those went down significantly in this game because I think, yeah, when you have a belief in the guys around you, it just on every level of your game and every part of your game, I think it changes things. It's funny too, you mentioned how we felt the full emotion throughout the week of the fans, being kind of the enemy to cheering on that day. And I felt like Nick Chubb had said it best leading up into the week when they had asked him about the cheering of the injury and all that stuff. He was like, I'm pretty sure if we start winning, that people will
Yeah.
feel a lot better. And that's all he would say to any answer. I'm like, that is just about it. As soon as you win a game, like everything kind of goes away and it all changes in that moment. So I feel like there was nothing more clear than that, than how everyone felt on Sunday.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, in such a good win too, to beat the Ravens, and
Yeah.
they were
Oh,
so like
always
their
feels good.
offense, such a juggernaut coming in. Their defense is really beat up. So that's like the one caveat. You're kind of like, so like on All Eyes on Cleveland, the chat was like very mixed. There was like some, the chat was like fired up, like we're gonna win. I know we're
Hmm.
so optimistic going into Sunday, and some were like, it was one game. They were 1-6 for kind of like I would say for more than one reason than the quarterback, which I kind of think was more just the quarterback, but they did have better offensive line play, and I do think Nick Chubb actually made a huge difference in pass protection, better than Ford
Hmm.
and the Foreman and definitely Pierre Strong. Like I thought he made a huge difference there, just picking up blitzes, and he pancaked a guy, and like they've been struggling to pick up blitzes with their running backs all year. So like a combination of things there helped, but just knowing that Jameis is in the pocket and he's
Yeah.
not going to put his head down and run out for no reason into a sack,
Yeah.
I feel like made all the difference. Because then like your tackles can just kind of force their guy around the outside, and
Yeah.
it just like I
It made
really do
everyone
think it was
else's
the
jobs
quarterback.
easier. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Which is, I mean, it's almost a relief that it is that, so that we can like go forward with the season and still feel like we can put a decent football team together. But it also makes it that much more frustrating that it took as
so
long as it did I mean, we didn't even bench him. It was forced into it by an injury. It's like, how long were we going to go on with this had that not happened and never gotten to see the full potential of the rest of this offense and the rest of this team in general?
infuriating to think about. I love Kevin. Don't want
Yeah.
him to lose his job ever, but for him to sit there and say, you know, Watson gives us the best chance to win and continue to play him. Like if they would have just made this
Yeah.
change like a couple weeks earlier, I feel like they would be in such a better position right now.
Yeah.
However,
Even sneaking out one more win, like if
yep.
we had 3 wins rather than 2, like that the position that puts you in to, like, try to contend for the wild card is completely different, so it does really make a big difference that they waited, didn't even wait as long as they did, that the injury forced them into it.
Yeah. Juan Thornhill still believes, says they got a bunch of AFC games. If they were to win Sunday, I think people's tone would change over the bye week because you got New Orleans coming out the other side, and you
Yep.
have a bunch of
Yeah, you still have
AFC
Ford
games.
Fizzle.
Y-
Yeah,
Yeah. So, I don't think you can give up on the season yet. I don't think it's lost yet. I think if you lost
right.
Sunday, you'd be in trouble, for
Yeah.
sure. But it'll be interesting to see if they can duplicate that against a better defense. Um, and then you have some thoughts tonight, Abby, on
Yeah.
tanking, because this was a topic I heard all week before the game on Sunday. What's
Yep.
it matter? Why are we trying to win 3, 4 more games? And this is a popular topic, and just kind of elaborate on what you're thinking here.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like this is a mindset a lot of people take on when they focus on, like, wanting to draft usually a quarterback or, like, a popular position player that someone really needs, and obviously this team in some way is going to be in the market for a quarterback, but I still think no matter the circumstances, like, I think even if we lose this weekend and continue on with the rest of the season with just 2 wins at this point in time, I don't think that tanking ever makes sense in football. I think putting in effort, no matter the circumstances, matters because if you don't, I think it can have some long term, implications for the rest of the team. I also think you're just kind of like working against yourself to like try to get this certain draft spot that you actually don't have control over based on other teams' performances. Like if you're losing a bunch and another team, that you thought was supposed to win loses and it actually puts you somewhere else, all of that stuff. Like you can't you can't test fate with those things. And I feel like people try to do that and it never ends up working out. So I think it's more important for the long-term effects of the locker room and just the guys to build on for next season. Because I do think you build from year to year. If things were to go horribly this year for the rest of the season, I do think that matters for the future. So I just think full effort, regardless of situation, matters. But some people disagree and are like, tank, get the best. You need a quarterback, go get that quarterback. But I just don't think it works like that.
Yeah. I agree. I agree with you in football. I think it's different in different sports. So like basketball,
True.
where you tank, like it's like a campaign, right? Like so
Yeah.
um it's like by halfway through the year, your best players are out with some sort of injury, and you like that's the only way some basketball teams get back to relevance, like smaller market
Right.
teams, right? Is
For sure.
by a couple lottery picks in a row, and then now you have a young core and you have to build that up. Football is different in the fact that like losing is detrimental to the locker room, the coaches involved, the people, the culture. Although you have to, you can't carry momentum over from a year to year necessarily. The culture is something that you have to preserve.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to go to 2-15, that's such a backslide culture wise and can impact the head coach's job, your GM's
Yeah.
job, players not wanting to be here, all of the things that you've tried the last 4 years to get out of, right? It would
Yeah.
like take you back into the Hugh Jackson era. It would feel like that. And
Yeah.
I know that would be really hard to take, I think, as a
Yeah.
organization. So I think you're absolutely right. I think you have to win as many games as you can. If you want to go get a quarterback, if you think there's somebody here, then you have to get your assets together and move up to get it if you really believe in somebody. Like if
Yeah.
that's and I don't think that person is in this draft anyways.
Right.
So,
I think that's a good point you bring up with the NBA being so different too, because I feel like if you can get one of those like top players in an NBA draft that could be like a franchise changing player, like there's only 5 guys on the court at a time in the NBA. I feel like each individual player has like the chance to be a little bit more impactful. Where like in the first round of the NFL draft, like most of the time the quarterbacks don't even work out. Like they don't even last in
yeah.
the league that long, like you're missing so much more often where I just feel like there's a higher chance of like hitting on someone that can change what you're doing as an organization if you have a top 5 pick in the NBA draft compared to in the NFL.
Yeah, plus they have the stupid in the NBA, they have the stupid rules where, your draft pick is protected. So say you're a
True.
team who has a top 5 protected pick and you don't think you're going to be very good that year. It benefits you so much to be
Hmm.
bad that you almost have to be bad at some point.
Yeah.
Like to save the pick, to get the top 5 pick, you have to be god awful. And
Right.
and when you're like you said, when you're only playing 5 players at a time and one player can change the course, plus small market teams aren't going to go out and make a big signing. That's the only way they get players like that sometimes. We
Yeah.
know that story in Cleveland very well, right?
Many times.
Uh, so, I think that it's different for
Yeah.
different sports, but football is a sport where I just think culture is more impactful than
Yeah.
baseball or basketball
Yeah.
in general. So I think you're absolutely right. I would winning any games, gaining any momentum, and even like for this season, if they were to lose on Sunday, the evaluation you need to do of this roster, like who are we going
Yeah.
forward with? Who quits, right? Who goes in the tank? Who's not in it till week 17, 18, playing
Yeah.
hard? Who do we want to be part of our young core? Because as much as people want this to be a rebuild, it's not going to be a rebuild. It's going to be a pivot. And you need to evaluate your quarterbacks on this roster. the only way you can evaluate your wide receivers is with decent quarterback play. So if things
Yep.
start to fall apart that badly that you're losing every game, you can't even evaluate what you have
Yeah.
to go
I mean,
forward.
look how much we got out of this past weekend and Jameis playing with those receivers. Like, that's the most we've gotten to see some of those guys. And like, what I mean, Cedric Tillman is a perfect example. Like, I just feel like we've been so unclear on what his potential is as a receiver, what type of receiver he could be, because it just hasn't had the opportunity. And that
Yeah.
was like, you need those moments, right, to kind of decide on, can we
Yeah.
move forward? Other guys that are on shorter contracts, who are you moving on from? And who are you gonna buy into for the future? It does. You're totally right. That matters a lot.
Yeah, it does. And like just the evaluation based, like, exactly. Wide receiver is a perfect example, or even offensive line. Like you
Mhm.
can, like DeJuan Jones, we didn't even think like we're banging in the table, or at least some of us were like, man, we wish we could see him at left tackle. He gets thrown into there out of necessity this week, but
Yeah.
he put forth good enough effort and did a good enough job in pass protection that I think he's earned the job to remain out there over Jed Wills, despite Jed being back at practice. I'm just tired of seeing Jed Wills give up on
Yeah.
plays and throw his hands in the air. And even though, like, when he plays well, he's probably a better left tackle than DeJuan right now. If you could identify and evaluate DeJuan as your future left
Mhm.
tackle, that's a first round draft pick that you don't have to spend anymore.
Yeah.
Right? It's a heck of a lot easier to find a right tackle than a left tackle in the NFL.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and like you said, they were kind of forced. I feel like this is the theme. They've been forced into these situations of things we want them to do, and then they just
Yeah,
have to do it out of necessity, which is a little frustrating because I would like to I believe in this coaching staff and this front office so much, but I'm like, do the things we know that you need to do
exactly.
to prove to us like this is who you are as an organization. So it is it's a little frustrating. I can't be like, well, yeah, they made this great choice. But
Yeah,
yeah, I completely agree that you need those evaluations of the offensive line as well, because it's so hard to find those pieces over time, that even if you solve one of them, if you solve one tackle, or if you solve one this piece of the future, that makes all the difference in how you're going to draft moving forward and how you approach free agency moving forward. Everything is so connected in football like that.
yeah, which is even more critical for the next few off seasons because of the Watson contract and because of the way they have to manage
Yeah.
it. You're gonna have to be right a lot on who you're keeping and who you're signing,
Yeah.
and like you can't really afford to miss on a big signing. On top of that, like, you know, I had Jack on, and the Browns can be competitive. Like the way that they're going to get out of this contract, it's going to take up space. You have to pay him. You don't have to
Hmm.
play him in 25 and 26. He'll get restructured and cut, or cut at probably first day of league year, and then post June designation, and that'll split it over 27 and 26. And so you're spreading the money out and you're expecting the cap to go up. So it's a lesser percentage of the cap that his money is taking
Right.
up, but it is going to impact. Like, you don't have to gut the roster. You can still be competitive. You can still pay guys and follow the same model like they have been, where they give you
Yep.
$1 million now, and we're going to give you a signing bonus and add some void years. They can continue to do that and add players, but you can't miss on what you have
Yeah.
in house, and you can't miss on any signings. So, um, it's going to be tough. So you got to be right. And I feel like in the midst of just losing and attitude, and, guys quitting and wanting to go on vacation, which is what we see when these teams start to tank, right?
Yeah.
Uh, how much harder that is to evaluate. And then I don't know if I trust Jimmy enough to just be like, all right, I know we were 2 or 3 win team this year, but I'm still bringing you back Kevin and Andrew.
Yeah. I mean, that is something that you do worry about. I go back and forth on this because I feel like so much of me, like, from what I'm seeing over the last couple of years, do believe he's changed in some ways and has been more hands off, just on what
Yeah.
we like visually have seen out there. Like and just the rumblings that we get within the media, you usually hear about those things of like, oh, the owner's getting involved here and there. Like there's sources everywhere that are willing to put that stuff out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I it is something that if it does kind of go downhill as we go through the rest of the season, it is something I worry about. But at the same time, I wonder if he, especially when it comes to Andrew Barry, the way that they have built this team and the way they do contracts is such a specific mindset. I think it would be really hard to have another GM come in with the way they do things and with where all these contracts are out right now, especially with the Deshaun contract, and be like, okay, do your own thing now. Like that's kind of hard to
Yeah.
do in the position that they're in at this time. So I think it would be
Unless
tough.
Yeah, it would be, unless you, like, hired, like, Glenn Cook or somebody that's been in the organization
Yes.
that understands the model that he's been following and the plan
Yes.
they've been following, then it could, because the second all these guys with void years and the second they're cut or whatever, all that money rolls up and you could be in a mess, right? Like, so you
Yeah.
have to have somebody that knows what they're doing and understands the bigger vision of all this. And as Jack has laid out, like he has this planned like 5 years out,
Yeah.
how to
Yeah,
manage the
anyone who
cap.
thinks, Andrew Barry would do, like, a full rebuild and be like, that's
No,
just not in his DNA, like, he does not operate like that. He's always gonna try to be planning for the future and somewhat be in the mix of things no matter what, which I would prefer. I don't want to go through a full rebuild. That does not sound fun to me at all.
me neither. Me neither. All right. Last question. Denzel has his sixth concussion. Um, we kind of talked about this off the air. Nobody can really tell him what to do in this situation. And I know he's done some
Yeah,
research and he's gotten independent opinions and stuff, but it's scary at this point, I think, a little bit. I told you what the Dr. Jesse Moore said to me, stacking effect could haunt him in the future. I know there's
yeah,
different schools of thought on this. I think there's, one school of thought is as long as you let it repair fully, then he should be fine. But they seem to be happening more frequently and easier.
yeah,
Um, I am concerned, but as a human being, he's about to come up. He's having an amazing year. He leads the league in pass breakups. He's probably considered a top 5-10 corner in the NFL. He got one big payday. He's about to get a second big payday of his life.
yeah.
I feel like if I was in that situation, I would feel like for my kids, my family, I would have to keep going anyways.
Yeah. I feel like it's so easy to be, like, in our position and say, like, "Oh, stop playing, like, what are you doing? It's ruining your
Yeah.
life." But when you have played this game your whole life, you've given everything to it, this is what you've worked towards, it's not as simple as being like, "Oh, I'll just walk away," especially when you're, like, still young and you haven't, like yeah, maybe when you're 70 years old, 60 years old, you're gonna start feeling a lot more of the ramifications of your football career. But right now, other than, you recover from that concussion, you feel pretty okay again. Like it's
Yeah.
hard to tell the guy, don't take millions of dollars on this next contract when, this is
I
what
feel
you've worked
fine.
for. And this is,
Yeah.
yeah, I feel fine. I can keep doing this. Like they're taught in football to kind of bounce back from things and injuries all the time in that way. So I think it's hard when it's that kind of life changing money. And, I think they all understand that, beyond their football career, they don't really know what's next for them, what avenues they're going to find to make money. Like this could be their last real opportunity to do something really big, especially in, you're not like a big name quarterback that's going to get a, you know, fancy media job. Like who knows what you're going to be doing next that could
Yeah.
make you some money. So it's hard to be like, yeah, you're this young, you have no idea how you're going to make money after age like I don't know, mid 30s or early 30s. Like, yeah, you got to get it while it's here. And I can respect that.
Yeah. It's a really tough situation to be in. Like, I don't even know how to. You try to you can't put yourself in those shoes. I heard someone say like, people work jobs all the time that are harmful to their health, but it's their job, so they do it.
Mm,
And it's so true over the years.
yeah,
You hear about class action lawsuits and stuff where people got a disease from working or people
yeah,
used to coal mines or black lung, all kinds of things like that, right?
yeah,
People backs and things like that, right? But like this is someone's brain.
yeah,
Um, we've seen the repercussions of CTE. I don't even know, like, I'm not, I don't, we're not medical professionals. I have no idea, like, how the number of concussions relates to something like that.
I know.
Um, but like, he keeps saying he's done his research and it's just so hard. It's such a human thing. I
Yeah,
understand like where he's coming from
right.
to want to keep playing, but at the
Yeah,
same time, it just feels so dangerous too. It's such a mess, kind of. You almost wish like the NFL there was a better way the NFL could handle this,
I
but
know.
like even when you're him, you want to do what you're good at. I'm sure he loves football. He's one of the best corners in the league. Like he doesn't want to stop. There's no way he wants to
Yeah,
stop playing football. Even if it wasn't about the millions of dollars, even if it was
yeah,
just his career, right? Like, and he was making, $100,000 a year. That's not, you know what I mean?
yeah.
I
He would
still
probably
feel
still
like
do
he
it.
would want to go
Yeah,
do it, right? Like,
yeah,
it's how I get my insurance for my family and you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's such a, you try to put yourself in his shoes, but I can't
yeah,
comprehend that sum of money, that he's
yeah,
gonna potentially make or miss out on. But you can kind of get the gist of the way guys feel in the NFL, and it's a mess,
yeah.
kind of.
Well, it's like so much of their identity, and we hear this from guys even when they retire, on like just trying to figure out who they are after football and how hard that is for so many of them because it is because it's such a part of who they are. The other thing that's interesting with CTE, where I feel like it's so hard for anyone, not even just players, like all of us, to fully understand what's going on there because so much of the knowledge about CT comes from when people have already passed away. Like they don't have ways of understanding all of it, while someone is still alive. So I feel like it's kind of like
So
the
true.
boogeyman out there. Like, I don't know, like this CTE, but we don't really know what's going on. So I
Yeah.
feel like when you can't put something so clear on it like that, it maybe seems to the players like it's kind of just some distant thing that they might not have to deal with and can't really wrap their brains around because I can't really like
Yeah.
understand it either, since it
Yeah.
is something so interesting like that.
Yeah, and just I feel like it's natural human instinct to be like, "Oh, that's not gonna happen to me." Right? Like,
Yeah,
how
yeah,
often do people just say that, right? Like, and,
yeah, with
about
anything.
everyday things, yeah.
Mhm.
Interesting. Alright, something to keep an eye on, though, I do think he'll be back,
Yeah.
yeah, so and, Jameis played an amazing game. It'll be fun to watch on Sunday. Hopefully, they can duplicate that against the Chargers, who have a much better defense, and, so I think it'll be an intriguing game. They've won some games. They win ugly. They're physical, and it's a different kind of matchup, so it'll be fun. Any parting words for our audience, Abby?
No, I'm feeling so rejuvenated though. Like, gosh,
Yes.
I had so much fun watching that game last weekend, and I have not felt that since the Jets game last season. Just the
Yes.
joy of watching a football team like that. So we're back. I'm feeling good.
It was like watching the team that I expected to get from week 1
Yep.
just appeared in week 8. So
It's a
weird.
beautiful
So
thing.
weird. Beautiful thing. Hopefully it continues. Abby Mueller, follow her on Twitter at Abby_Mueller_. Make sure you check out her podcast, listen to her on all of our shorts over at the OBR, youtube.com/Orange and Brown Report. For Abby, my name is Brad. This has been Things I Think I Know About the Browns. Have a great weekend. Go Browns.